When most of us think of Samsung, it's in terms of high-end as well as mass-market smartphones. We, in particular, identify and recognize the brand as the topmost competitor to Apple. But did you know that Samsung started far removed from the cutting-edge technology we've come to associate with it, and that the company used to trade fish and vegetables? And did you know that Samsung smartphones form less than 10% of what the company does? Today, we're going to dissect and explore this company with roots in the Korea of the mid-20th century and perhaps the most recognized brand from the Far East. But before we get started and see how this company evolved from trading fish to producing cutting-edge technology devices, I urge you to subscribe to our channel, Companies Explained. You don't want to miss any of the informative and exciting videos we carefully put together for your consumption. At Companies Explained, we publish several fresh videos every week about famous brands and companies from around the world whose stories you may want to hear. With that out of the way, let's get going with today's pick. Samsung is the brainchild of Lee Byung-chul, who was born in 1910 in the rural southeast of South Korea. He was from a rich South Korean family that had vast land holdings. And like kids of many wealthy South Koreans of this time, after high school, Lee Byung-chul was sent abroad to study. He was enrolled into Waseda University, a private college in Tokyo, Japan. Remember, before the Second World War, Japan had a lot of influence on the Korean peninsula, and that explains why many wealthy families sent their kids to Japan, a country they considered then to be the source of the best education money could buy. But like is the case with founders of other major brands, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook and others, Lee Byung-chul did not graduate. He came back home and with a capital of about $27 established a grocery store in 1938. He sold vegetables, dried Korean fish and noodles. The noodles were the first product he produced under his brand. The real business grew over time and soon he moved into trucking. At this time, much of Korea relied solely on road transport for the movement of goods and people. Lee Byung-chul named his growing company Samsung Trading Co. The name Samsung translates to 3 stars. The significance of 3 stars in regard to the brand has been explained in an infographic the company published in 2013 on their official website. It reads, "The name was chosen by Samsung founder Lee Byung-chul, whose vision was for his company to become an everlasting like the stars in the sky." By the end of the Second World War, Samsung had grown into a vast enterprise operating in the entire Korean peninsula. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, new opportunities emerged for the company. Samsung played a significant role in supplying as well as moving goods and machinery to the South Korean Army, and by extension, the US Army based in the country. But all was not great for the company during this period. At some point during the war, the North Korean Army captured Seoul, which had served as the nerve center of the company. Lee Byung-chul had to move his headquarters to Busan, the second largest South Korean city. When the North and South signed a ceasefire that is in place to date, by the way, if you did not know, the North and South Koreans are technically still at war with each other, Samsung moved back to Seoul. And not only that, it continued to grow. The company slowly expanded from trucking to manufacturing and production. By the early 60s, it was into textile production and food processing. It was also into insurance, securities trading and large-scale retail. Samsung had also acquired several commercial banks in the country. Then something happened in 1961 that jeopardized the future of the company. There was a coup, and a new government of dictator Park Chung-hee came to power. This government was not friendly to Lee Byung-chul and his businesses. In fact, it wasn't anything personal. The new government thought that Samsung and other mega companies in South Korea had too much influence and had to be brought under some form of control. Anticipating a brutal clampdown, Lee Byung-chul escaped to Japan, but things changed quickly. Acknowledging his capacity to oversee industrialization of the country, the government chose to negotiate with him. An agreement was struck. Samsung would be allowed to do business on the condition that it gave up interests in banking and accepted some direction from the government. The effects of this agreement have been witnessed in the recent past. During the 2018 prosecution of Park Geun-hye, who was the president between 2013 and 2017 over corruption charges, it came out that major Korean brands like Samsung were sometimes forced to pay hefty bribes to government officials and their associates. By the way, Park Geun-hye is the daughter of Park Chung-hee, who came to power in 1961 and was assassinated in 1979. Now back to the story. The terms presented to Lee Byung-chul were agreeable. He went back to South Korea to continue building his company, and soon he was in the good books with the government. He was trusted enough to be the founder chairperson of the Federation of Korean Industries. Meanwhile, Samsung continued to spread its wings. It soon entered the electronic industry, with the manufacturing of semiconductors and transistors being among its earliest products in the space. In the 70s, Samsung started shipbuilding and construction businesses, and in the next 2 decades it experienced massive growth. It's about this time that it started getting attention in the West and the rest of the world. And as the power of computers got realized, Samsung manufactured its first personal computer in 1985. It was for the domestic market, but it put the brand on the path to compete with others in the computer hardware space on the global stage in the coming years. Lee Byung-chul passed on in November 1987, leaving behind a massive conglomerate that called for breakdown for easy management. Indeed, after the death of its founder, Samsung was split into 4 independent businesses with a focus on different industries. These are: number 1, CJ Group, a holding company with interests in biotechnology, pharmaceutics, food production and service, media and entertainment, real estate and logistics. It's through one of its flagships that Everland Resort is managed. Everland Resort is the oldest and one of the largest theme parks in South Korea. Number 2, Hansol, also a holding company with interests in construction, tourism, interior design and chemical production. Number 3, Shinsegae, a department store franchise and runs some of the oldest department stores in South Korea. And number 4, Samsung Group, a holding company under which entities like Samsung Electronics, Samsung Heavy Industries, Samsung Insurance, and Samsung Engineer and Samsung C&T are managed. After the death of Lee Byung-chul, his son Lee Kun-hee took over the leadership of the company. Samsung has grown to produce close to 1/5 of South Korea's total exports. The majority of Samsung manufacturing is done in South Korea. However, the company does have plants in other countries. One of its biggest plants outside South Korea is found in Austin, Texas, USA. Other locations with Samsung manufacturing plants include Suzhou and Xi'an in China. Let's look at Samsung's evolution within the telecommunication industry. What the company has achieved in this space is what has made it visible to many around the world. The path to smartphones goes back many years. It's important to point out that Samsung has also built a lot of presence with other electronic devices and appliances. They range from fridges, ovens, washing machines, home systems, and more. Samsung's first involvement with telephone technology was in the early 1980s when it purchased a company by the name Hanguk Jeonja Tongsin, which had accumulated some capacity in the space. Samsung's first products in the space were telephone switchboards, telephones and fax machines. Along with these, the company ventured into personal computer production in 1984. Also important in the growth of Samsung's ability to produce modern telephony solutions was the launch of Samsung Printing Solutions in 1982, which delivered digital solutions for the printing industry. This is important, considering that cameras are critical features of Samsung smartphones. The company released its first smartphone in 2001. It was named SPH 300. It was not a massive hit in the market, but it set it off on a journey that would see it become one of the best in the space. Samsung released smartphones with various capabilities over the next few years. In 2005, it became among the first phone manufacturers to include speech recognition in a smartphone. However, the major break for the company in the smartphone space came in 2011 with the release of Samsung's Galaxy S2, a high-end phone that utilizes the open-source Android operating system. It was received well in the market as a competitor to Apple's iPhone series and other high-end smartphone brands. The company has released new versions of this phone each year. Similar models by the company include the Galaxy Note series and Galaxy Edge series. The capability to produce these high-end phones has been helped by the acquisition of smaller companies offering different technological capabilities, a common practice by major technology companies around the world. However, Over the years, Samsung and iPhone have accused each other of infringement of patents. In 2014, Samsung was ordered to pay Apple $119 million for using some of its patented technology. In the same ruling, Apple was ordered to pay Samsung $158,400 for also infringing on patents of the latter. In 2018, a court ordered Samsung Electronics to pay Apple $539 million for copying its patented smartphone features. With the cutthroat competition going on and the need to acquire the ever-changing, we've highly likely not seen the last of lawsuits between Samsung and Apple, or with other companies in the space. What does the future hold for Samsung? What steps is the brand taking to adapt to market changes? It's not easy to tell how future societies will look, and in particular what technology is going to exist. However, we can speculate using what is happening now. Ask anyone who is keenly watching technology evolving, and they'll tell you the future is virtual reality, big data, artificial intelligence, and the blockchain technology. Each of these is contributing to a new reality in unique ways. Samsung seems to be conscious of this reality. Going by its actions, it's doing all it can to prepare for it and maintain its relevance in the market. In 2014, Samsung released its first virtual reality gadget named Gear VR, which is compatible with Samsung smartphones. Samsung has also set up a research arm that's dedicated to building capacity in artificial intelligence, or AI. Samsung Research has 7 global centers in 5 countries around the globe. These centers are in Seoul in South Korea, Cambridge in the United Kingdom, Toronto and Montreal in Canada, Moscow in Russia, and Silicon Valley and New York in the United States. In regard to blockchain, Samsung seems to be already pursuing a policy of including native wallets for blockchain assets in their new smartphone releases. The first smartphone to have this functionality was the Samsung S10 that was released in January 2019. Its core software includes a native blockchain wallet known as Samsung Knox. Whether these steps will give Samsung an edge is something we have to wait and see. The last point I want to bring up is that revenues from smartphone sales is a tiny portion of what the entire conglomerate generates. In fact, even within the electronics line, smartphones is a minor product. To give you an idea, in the 2018 final year Samsung Electronics financial reports, the display panel business line, which includes smartphones and smart TVs, reported $7.7 billion consolidated revenue. Compare this with the $15.8 billion that the semiconductor business line alone posted in the same period. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and click the below button so you don't miss more videos like this. See you soon!